said 32, so it's around 33.
Levels of service, page 19. Is that it?
No, it's the assumptions and financial risks, roads and footpaths. Page 32.
That's wastewater.
Yeah, road and footpaths funding.
Sorry.
Go to section 6. It's around the financial
Could
estimates.
somebody go
and
through the
assumptions.
portrait version and give the correct numbers on this one so that we can turn to the right page? Yeah, thank you. It won't take long. Yeah, sorry, Yanni.
That's okay. That's fine.
I still haven't found it. Assumptions on, is it roads and footpaths? Yes, I've got that. It's page 28 for those on landscape.
Yeah. So just obviously the accessible city transport project has now gone up to 250 million. So I think there needs to be some comment on that. Can you advise why this is 191 but it's now at 250 in the CD?
So the number that's in front of you there on page 28 is the 2014 dollar value number that has since been adjusted to 2015 dollar values. And also, obviously, there's ongoing work with an accessible city. That was the number that was provided to us at that time. As I say, since that time, numbers have been adjusted to 2015 values for the LTP.
Okay. So there's also talk there about the shortfall from the Crown, and that's obviously gone up as well. Do we have a total figure for those financial risks and assumptions now that we're dealing with? And if so, what is it?
So we don't have that number at this stage. That review of the cost sharing agreement is underway.
Right, it's just that I thought for the Auditor General, we have to allow for the worst case scenario on these risks and assumptions. So we must have a figure that we've put into our financial strategy.
Well, we're not including $200 million in our financial strategy based on the resolution that I've put to the meeting. So
it's not the shortfall from the Crown that I'm interested in. It's what is the total cost of these assumptions and financial risks as per the updated numbers that we've been. So I don't. Regardless of whether it's the Crown shortfall or the skirt shortfall or all those other issues, I just want the total number that's underpinning our financial strategy.
Are they being inflation adjusted, you mean? Are they inflation adjusted now? That's the difference between the 2014 and 2015.
Sorry, I don't know which projects you're referring to though, Yanni.
Here's a really good one. Like, we know that skirt aren't going to do the second ceiling on the roads, so we've got roads that haven't got a second seal that are going to need extra expenditure, and that's 41.9 million. So, you know, that's applying to the 4 Avs and City Mall and High Street.
Yeah, but we're awaiting the outcome of the horizontal infrastructure review. So we'll know the results of that, but by the time we, get to the final point on this, I wouldn't worry too much about it now.
Maybe I'll move just up top.
But no, actually, the point that you raise is actually raised somewhere else. Roads and footpaths. Sorry, because I was going to raise that question as well.
I mean, I just don't believe the Auditor General would sign off on those assumptions if they're not correct.
It's just that because I think that the public expectation is that, that we'll be, putting back better than what was there before. But in fact, what it actually says is that we won't be meeting pre-earthquake levels when we've completed the work. And that was of concern, obviously, to me, and will be something. Oh, here we go. It's page 25 on the landscape version. Earthquake legacy and levels of service. The initial phases of repair or replacement of this infrastructure, so this is roads and footpaths, is priority for recovery and is expected to be completed by SCIRT in 2016. However, in many instances, even once the network is reinstated, it will not be to the same standard as was typical prior to the earthquakes, and it will be approximately 30 years before the whole network is returned to a reasonable level of service. It is assumed that some of the roading will remain operational in the residential red zone network as well. So I think that that will be a surprise to a lot of people in Christchurch, that the SCIRT program isn't going to deliver back to pre-earthquake levels, because the phrase, 21st century resilient city, build back better, all of these phrases have been really captured from many sources. But we're really going out there now and saying to the public that for the next 30 years, it ain't going to be like it was. That was a nod.
And,
a sad nod from the end of the table, I take it. Dave?
oh, sorry, I still...
We're doing a piece of work with the NZTA at the moment. We're hoping to start a piece of work that will look at it, and it depends on what comparators you use prior to earthquake and after earthquake, exposure to smooth travel time, roughness, a whole range of things. We were hoping that would be a piece of work that would have been done. It got drafted out or scoped out early January, and but it's not going to be ready for the independent review. So we are trying to get a one point of truth around that smoothness. Roughness is important to us. Exposure to smooth travel time is important to NZTA,
Yep.
and important to us as well.
Yeah.
But there's a whole range of those. So, but that's our expectations at the moment. And we've just got to put in this document what are the assumptions and what are the conclusions.
Yeah, no.
So-
I mean, I'm not being critical. In fact, I'm actually really pleased that we're surfacing, if that's the right word, if not resurfacing, the issues that the public have got to really focus on in terms of the debate that we're going to have around the consultation document. So this is an area that we'll have to elevate in terms of the way that the consultation document is put together. So I'm actually really grateful that it's been presented in such a clear way.
So the question that I was trying to...
David?
Just add to that is that the horizontal infrastructure governance group has just released a whole pile of roading work, a significant amount of roading work. So please don't think that the roads that are out there today are what's going
Oh,
to
no. But the double surfacing issue is one that is definitely the case. And the issue with the double surfacing, as I understand it, is that if you don't double surface, you're back there repairing a lot more quickly than you would be otherwise.
And that's part under the cost share agreement talks about that will be done in terms of the funding and something rather technical manual run by NZTA, and they actually say this is eligible for emergency works and second coat seals aren't, and so that's what. So it's actually about some of the rules that sit with NZTA
Right.
rather than the cost share, and so NZTA can only apply their rules in a certain way, but we're still having that debate.
Yeah.
The door's
But
not
I think the figure I was trying to get to was what is the total estimated or assumed cost of the infrastructure repair from the earthquake to the standard that we choose, which is the decent standard, not the lowest standard, that you would do in a modern city. So what we must know, with all the infrastructure stuff we've done and all the SCIRT assessment,
do we have a
what the
current
total
estimate?
figure is.
Because obviously in the 3-year plan it was identified as 398 million, and this is a question I guess that's going to go to Peter when we get back to the financial strategy. The 398 million was our best estimates, but it was forward looking. So what is that figure today? Is it 398 million still, or are you still operating off that because that's what we've put on budget?
We're still working off the 2.94
Yeah,
billion.
right. So that's the 398 difference.
Cost share. At that time, we had an estimate of around 3.4 billion.
Yeah,
And in actual fact, our original estimate at the time of the damage was 3.7 billion. So now we've come back and we believe that probably that about 3 billion is enough to cover all the work if you took out land drainage. Now, land drainage is a different issue because the infrastructure necessarily hasn't been broken as much, but the land's dropped, so the effectiveness that infrastructure has been. So that's a totally different debate, and that's again, as in the infrastructure plan, that's the big uncertainty. You know, we've got parts of the city that's got 600 millimetres. We've got parts of the city that's
More than a
this
metre,
way.
yeah. No, I do understand that, but I think that, again, you've touched on another important point, that because the city took on a program of naturalisation around some of its land drainage, we don't have in pipes what other cities would have in pipes. And so therefore the expectation that there would be a cost-sharing arrangement around some of the land drainage perhaps hasn't really been factored into the SCIRT program for that reason.
And I think that's part of it, because talking to the people that were involved in the cost share and you know, it's a string of people. I think from the Christchurch city, they felt that what they brought into the cost share was an effective land drainage repair as one of the horizontal infrastructure. It's irrelevant of whether it's a pipe with no roof, which happens to be a channel, or even not a channel, it just happens to be a piece of metal. It's still needed to be effectively delivering that.
That's right.
So with the land
we've got a long
drainage,
way to go yet.
the total estimated cost of the total SCIRT repair or infrastructure repair is sitting at what?
3 billion?
Yeah, sitting about 2
Land drainage.
billion, because there's about $1 billion of non-SCIRT work, which is around other infrastructure assets, and that doesn't include land drainage. So
Right.
land drainage on top of that, and that gives you a ballpark figure. But these are all conversations that we are, you know, there's a big workshop with the independent assessor tomorrow that is going to go through some of these fine points, and maybe we will get a better agreement, a better picture then.
I just think in terms of going out to consult with our public, I think it's really important that we tell them, if we just do the kind of lowest standards that
Yanni,
then this is where we
I
get
understand what you're saying, but
is the cost of doing
we're going to
resilient
obviously develop a consultation document that has to be crystal clear around that.
Okay.
I think that the uncertainty that sits around here is the timing. So if the horizontal infrastructure independent review had been completed in the time frame that had been anticipated by the cost share agreement, we would know what those numbers were.
Yeah, I
so, you know,
Okay,
we
that's
are a little bit punching in the dark, but, you know, by the time we get to the consultation document on the 10th of whatever, March, we will, I think, have a better frame for how we go out for the
That's
public
great. And just the final
consultation.
question from me is, when we were developing the infrastructure strategy, we were given, which I thought was really useful, was a road optimisation map that showed what roads were going to be fixed and which ones weren't. I think it'd be incredibly important to have maps in here that show the proposed work and the different options. So why haven't those maps been attached, and can we attach those maps so people can see really clearly what the current...
I think that's unfair because the SCIRT optimisation process has not been allowed for in this infrastructure strategy as from on page 28. It says no allowance is made for SCIRT's optimisation process, and it's assumed that their program of works as at November 2013 will be completed as planned. I just think that it would be unfair to go out and say that a particular outcome will be the long-term outcome of what we agree to as a council. Is that?
And that's right, because there's part of the program that hasn't been released to, I'm sorry, Yanni, I'm not sure about what maps you're talking about, because the final program that's going to SCIRT on the roading has not been there. You know, the optimisation group has prioritised a range of projects, and we haven't released some of them, but there are quite significant roading projects. So I wouldn't be able to give you a map to show you what's been done, what's there, and then it would have to be so detailed, because some roads I might go in there and I might do from me to the near on that road and do no more. So it gets, you know...
So with respect,
one of the sizes.
we had a really clear, I thought it was one of the best pieces of information we got, which showed here's the different standards of repair as choices that you have to make. And it had photographs of the footpaths that would be repaired, footpaths that wouldn't, roads that would be repaired, roads that wouldn't.
I think
and it had a map.
I think that my intervention before, I think, was designed to be helpful rather than combative.
Yeah.
The issue is that we went through a presentation, or more than one presentation, on the effects of the optimisation process. That was to keep the expenditure for skirt projects within the budget agreed in the cost share agreement. For going beyond the cost share agreement, it requires the independent review to be completed and then for further negotiations to occur between the council and the Crown. So I don't think it's actually, it's less than it's not fair. It's actually not accurate to put out information in the public arena that may or may not be the ultimate decision that the council makes. And remember that the only issue that the cost share agreement deals with is who pays. It doesn't actually deal with the decisions that we have to make as a council over the next 30 years. And that's made crystal clear for the first time by an infrastructure strategy that covers 30 years.
I agree with you. And so what I want is the public to be able to see what's going to happen in terms of infrastructure repair and when. And
But we haven't agreed what will happen. We have imperfect information. I did have a suggestion a wee while ago about delaying this year for a bit, but that wasn't to happen, and we're in the position that we're in. We have imperfect information. We don't know what the results of the independent review will be. We don't know the true costs of the land drainage recovery program and what contribution might be coming our way with regard to that. We don't know about contributions in terms of cycleways, and we don't know about our insurance recoveries. I would say that this makes our position very challenging, but that puts a greater onus on us as a council to provide the leadership that the city's looking for, which is to enable them to contribute to the decision-making process despite those uncertainties. Phil?
Chris, I just thought of this last night, so I'm sorry I haven't come to you on this, but on page 28, with the assumptions again, the second last bullet point is that accessible city projects aren't included. So, does that actually include the second phase projects, for example, like Kilmore Street? But in fact, they're not part of this, or could you just perhaps clarify that?
Well, the intention of this section is to just clearly detail what has been excluded from the numbers at the back. That doesn't necessarily mean to say those things are excluded from the LTP or anywhere else. Is to put into context in terms of the assessments we've made and the financial graphs that you're seeing there, what is and isn't included in those, because at the time that we began putting this document together, those numbers were not firm, they were not fixed, and they were changing. So we've had to, and we're required to, in terms of the framework, just detail what assumptions we've made, what things are excluded from the assessment that is from the things that are included in those financial graphs. So it's not intended to be an exact estimate of what those exclusions may or may not cost. It's just to detail for you, or for any other reader of this, what isn't in those numbers at this stage.
So that's like information we had at this stage, but in fact, some of these are in the financials for the capital program.
With respect to accessible cities, the capital program, planned capital program, does outline what those accessible city capital expenditures are.
Okay.
About page 230 something from memory.
Thanks, Ben.
Are we able to move on to the financial strategy now, or are there more questions on the infrastructure strategy? Jimmy, Glenn?
Two questions regarding to the infrastructure strategy. On page 19, the asset management information system, the improvement resilience, because I'm still concerned regarding to the last paragraph, council the network modeling. At the moment still going on, not yet finished. So I'm not sure what kind of big impact regarding to our infrastructure strategy, especially for the cost estimate, have any impact or not up to now? Whether we overestimate or underestimate. On page 19, last paragraph. No, this one. Infrastructure strategy. Last paragraph. Yes, 4.4, yeah. Yeah,
Question.
that's right.
Eh? We still haven't got numbers, no.
It's a bigger gap or not?
In terms of the estimates that are provided from the asset management information system,
Yes, modeling, particularly after earthquake,
so the models are only
Model,
based on so our asset management information system contains a whole lot of information about when assets were put into the ground, what the latest condition assessment of them might show and so on. That's then put into models to say, well, on the basis of, for example, a life of, say, 80 years for an asbestos concrete pipe, cement pipe, looking at the age profile of all the network that we have, when do we think we're going to have to start replacing that? And that builds up the financial profile. So that it is based on a lot of assumptions in terms of the expected life of those assets. It's based on some assumptions around their existing condition, but it is pretty much what is used across the country in terms of long-term estimates of what you may need to provide in dollar terms to make sure your network stays in good condition. But that information is all in our asset management information system, and that supplies the various models that we use to predict when things will need to be replaced or predict when things will need to be extended to service new subdivisions or new development, and the whole lot is put together to form up those financial estimates. So yes, there is a plus and minus figure to those, because it's only basically determined by the assumptions we make in that model. But it's based on historical evidence of those pipes lasting that number of years, and it is constantly being refined.
So all the estimate, the cost is reasonable, it's under control.
In terms of the cost estimates that are applied to replacing those things, they're based on where we think the market may go at that period of time. Not necessarily the immediate market, because that is obviously being influenced by the rebuild. So we're taking information from previous contracts, where cost indices may go, and where we think the market may be in 5 or 6 years' time, when hopefully the market has settled down to a more stable nature in terms of what's been applied here. But we've taken all of those and then we've applied rates to each particular type of work to extrapolate out to the overall program.
Thank you. Glenn?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. My question is about the percentage of underground infrastructure that has been replaced already. Have we got a figure on that since the September quakes?
You'll
I
see
don't
it
have that
it
figure.
gets reported through the infrastructure. You'll see it in a graph of, we give you that dashboard. I'm sorry, I haven't got a copy of the report there,
Yeah.
but it comes up every month.
This is looking forward, not backwards, so it's in the it's in the monthly report to your committee, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. My second question related to that is, and obviously we have to do this, we have to look at the assumptions and risks, which is what this is about. Page 30 there, it talks about the from year 11 onwards, it increases to allow for deferred works and other long-term issues. My question is that given that my understanding is the underground infrastructure held up after the September quake, I'll start again. The infrastructure that was replaced after the September quake held up in February. Correct. Yeah. So what are the projected savings given now the greater resilience in terms of future renewals?
So in terms of future renewals, what we've done some work through SCIRT in terms of what impact we believe the earthquakes had on the residual life of the pipes that weren't directly affected by the earthquake, but might have had some life knocked out of them, and they're the assumed lives we put into the models. The quantum of our networks that are actually going to be replaced through this don't significantly, obviously the stuff that has been replaced, that greater resilience has been provided through the stuff that has been replaced. But bearing in mind, quite a lot of the skirt program isn't total replacement; it's repairs or lining and other techniques they've used to put the stuff back into service. So it doesn't have a significant impact in terms of looking at the 30-year horizon, and just because of the percentage of stuff that has been totally renewed is relatively low.
I want to sort of kind of conclude this on pages 11 and 12. So, and to tie affordability and level of service to resilience. So the statement here that our constrained financial position has reduced our ability to deliver pre-earthquake levels of service, and this is likely to be the case for many years, we need to establish an appropriate balance between expenditure required to accommodate growth, and obviously the growth is out the southwest, and the asset renewal costs to restore levels of service. So it is a balancing act, but that's something that we really do need to draw to the public's attention when we go out to consult, isn't it? And the link for me is with the resilience component over on page 12. The scope of work now included limits repairs, or the scope of works now included limits repairs to critical defects assets only, which is some areas will provide a network which is much less resilient to future earthquake events. So not that I'm wishing anything to kind of happen and I'm touching wood every time I say that, but there is a link there, isn't there, around, and that's something that we really do need to ask the people of Christchurch if they're prepared to make that well, if they want to invest in resilience, they have to invest up front now rather than hold it off over a period of time. But there's a cost to do that. At the same time as we're trying to manage for growth in areas that perhaps we weren't anticipating such a high level of growth in such a short space of time.
That's correct. I mean, obviously through the rebuild, resilience has been built in where it can for the critical things like wellheads, things that suffered a lot of damage, so they are more resilient to future events. Critical pipelines, the couplings on critical pipelines are far more resilient for a future event, but cost would have prohibited providing that sort of level of resilience over the whole of our network.
Yeah. So it's a finely judged balancing act. That's great. Thank you. So now we'll move on to the financial strategy.